Hungary, and Hungary is so bro science. I mean, okay. I know you want to. Me too, but it's too much. It's crazy. That's like stuck back in time 30 years. That they still believe that the good old stuff. Carbs make you fat. When you are on a diet, you need higher reps. I'm talking this level bro science, okay. And because I got all the qualification here and all the stuff, and my knowledge is a bit beyond that because I've been living here in the UK.
Sure.
And
sure.
I thought that doing some kind of like an educational videos, talk about really basic stuff like, I don't know, calorie deficit, insulin, bulking, really, really basic, simple stuff. And everyone found it so unknown, unheard of, like,
okay,
what are you talking about? So basically the channel became quite popular, I would say. And I thought, rather than just me sitting here talking about, all this stuff, I can actually introduce people to the show, invite people to the show, not just from Hungary, obviously, but
sure.
Worldwide. And the first person I thought was Broderick Chavez. I'm sure you're familiar.
Oh, yeah. I like Broderick.
Of course.
Yeah.
I honestly think that when it comes to, PEDs and diets and macros and stuff like that, he is the best. Which is funny enough because he was the first one on my kind of like international podcast. And you are the second one, which is funny because, he's the ultimate PED guy. And now you are technically the ultimate natural champion. It's kind of funny, but I thought natural bodybuilding getting really, really popular in Hungary. And I really want to not promote it, but, try to make it more popular than it is because I believe in natural bodybuilding. I have competed naturally, although I am not right now. It doesn't matter. Okay. And I thought that who could be the best, who could be better than you, to talk about natural bodybuilding. So I've been following you for years, especially since you've done the podcast with Fuad.
Okay, cool.
Which was, by the way, amazing. I've seen it like 15 times at least.
Okay.
And so basically, what I thought for today is just, oh, by the way, I'm already recording this, so I'm going to add it.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. No worries.
Just going through basic stuff, spending maybe like 2, 3, 5 minutes maybe on each topics. So I'm just going to give you questions, and then you give me my answer, and then we go from there. It's going to be really basic, but first of all, I want you to talk about yourself a little bit. So basically, when did you start working out, and what's your competitive history, and just from the beginning till today, basically, how do you go?
Sounds good.
So that's the first question.
Do you want me to? Okay, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, no worries. So, I got into probably the gym when I was about 14. I was actually playing at professional clubs with soccer or football. And what happened was I had a couple of injuries and I spent a little bit of time in the gym there. Realized at that time that I was probably quite athletic, quite strong for the gym in general anyway. What happened was I spent probably the next 4 years or so like doing bits in the gym, but also I didn't quite make it professional football player. So what happened was I then sort of like came away from playing semi-professional and then just stopped football altogether. And that's where I really kind of got into the gym. So that was probably about 17, I would say, where I sort of like started properly, I would say.
Oh, I mean,
35, 36.
Same. A bit older than you.
So so best part of 20 years or so since I sort of picked up a weight really, and I did train from home for a little bit as well. So that was all good. And then basically I started my very first show at 22. So we did a natural bodybuilding show. I mean, I didn't really know anything about natural bodybuilding at the time. There was a guy in our gym who said, you should come along and watch this show. And we were like, oh, well, because I, just assumed that bodybuilding was what, front of what Flex magazine looked like, and was like, well, nowhere near this size. So maybe that's not really doable. And then basically what happened from there is that we went to watch a show and then realized that, okay, it's very doable. So I did my very first show at 22. That was the first year at juniors. So I won my qualifier in Scotland and then won the British finals that year in my first year. So that was quite like a nice introduction to bodybuilding. And that actually is probably one of the reasons why I never really sort of crossed over into unnatural bodybuilding, is because I just was sort of good at straight out the gate, really. And then I sort of basically competed like 2 or 3 years on the trot. I had sort of years on, years off. Always placed very, very well in British final levels in the men's categories. So second twice in lightweights at 72 kilos or so. And then I turned professional in 2013. So I'd taken a 2-year off season, turned professional. Then I was obviously the natural pro. And then I've been won 2 world titles in 16 and 17 after a mixed bag of results the years before as a lightweight pro. And then came second in the overall twice. And then basically decided to do my first, which was an open show. It's not a natural show, but I was still a natural bodybuilder myself. And ended up winning winning my Class D in Classic and then the overall to win the IFBB Pro card. So that was 2020. So I've done I did a pro show 2020. I came 13th out of 14. And then I did the Tampa Pro show this year in August, and I placed 14th out of 40. So that was a much better placing, but still 14th. So obviously for a natural, it's great. I'm still natural now, and very much on the fence with what I'm going to do moving forward. But for the time being, no plans as such to kind of do anything and go from there.
It's funny you mentioned that, because this would have been a question later, but I'm just going to get it right now. Why did you stick to natural bodybuilding, and why didn't you change to the other side? Because let's face it, there is a limit on natural bodybuilding, and maybe you haven't reached it yet, but you probably really close. And are you planning to move to the other way?
Yeah, it's a very difficult decision, something that I've thought about long and hard, to be honest. The reason why, as I said, I sort of mentioned earlier, is that I sort of did really well out the gate, really. I mean, in 2013 and 2014, I competed in unnatural shows and won the one in 2013 and came second in a really big PCA show in 2014. So because Classic was introduced, it gave me a really good avenue with doing other shows. I mean, I did a Yorkshire Classic, which was kind of like a bit of a NABBA affiliate, and I won the overall at that show in open bodybuilding. So always coming in condition, obviously was always going to place well. So when I actually hit it on the mark, and I've been really up and down with it. When I've kind of been on the mark and on the money when I've needed to be, but I have done some shows where I've been way off as well. But I guess no one remembers them ones because you only sort of post the pictures up when you look decent, to be fair. So that was that, really. But I mean, I guess it's still a decision I sit with every day at the moment, because it's a bit different. I think if I'd never won an IFBB Pro card, I would not be tempted in the slightest, because I think that from a health perspective, from a longevity perspective, from how my parents might view it, how all the people who I guess have followed me through natural bodybuilding, it's kind of you gain a level of respect, I guess, when the higher you go with natural bodybuilding.
It almost feels like a letdown, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. It's one of them. I mean, I'm actually not really too fussed about what people might think if I did, because I just think one door closes, another one opens, because you can't take away them achievements that I've done that naturally anyway, and when I won the Two Bros overall to win the IFBB Pro card, I beat people who are 70 pounds heavier than I was. So your condition, shape, flow carries you a long way with that side of things. So every time these results kept happening, where I kept doing untested shows and winning or coming very close, it was always a reminder for me that I didn't really need to do anything, because it was look, you still progressed. I still progressed, fortunately, even from 22, from not really knowing what I was doing nutrition wise. I mean, I was eating 400 grams of protein a day and pretty much 0 carbs, and I was in shape. Do you know what I mean? I was a British champion. Do you know what I mean? And so I kind of I would say genetically kind of fluked my way for the first few years. Then I kind of found a bit of a formula and sort of when I won my pro card, and then that just continued to get better. So, I mean, I didn't really put on much scale weight each year, but my physique, matured, and it got, more dense, more quality to it. And it's only really this year that, I've actually put on any scale weight over the last 10 years. I mean, I was about 75, 76 kilos on stage, and probably arguably one of the most conditioned in the whole show. So it was kind of like at Tampa. So, you know, that was, you know, that's what kind of got me into that second call out, first of all, even though the other guys were a lot bigger than I was. It was, you know, as I said, you know, good condition, good flow. So, so for me, it was like I said, it's always this sort of reminder now, like if I want to go and win an IFBB Pro show, I honestly don't think it's possible to do it naturally unless someone's got better genetics than I have. So there are people out there as well. There's a guy called Nathan Williams who probably would walk a classic show. Do you know what I mean? Like he's a overall natural champion as well. There's a few other guys I've seen who could probably do very, very well. Like in classic itself, I'm talking about, not in an open show. So there's that. I mean, it's probably possible. Maybe the right day, the right lineup, the right judges. But you know, it's one of them. But it's just it's one of them.
You know, Greg Doucette?
Mm-hmm.
You heard of, yeah.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Of course, you know, he's kind of done the same. You know, he was competing as a natural for, I don't know, 10, 15, if not more years. And then he switched to the, you know, to the IFBB, and then he started using PEDs and stuff like that. So, you know, and he's doing quite well. So I don't think it would give a letdown feeling to your career if you know, change it. But of course, yeah, that's a big step. And especially now knowing that you, even naturally, you're there. You're really nearly there. It's not like you're way smaller than the other guys. It's not like you're way less shredded than the other guys. It's just one step.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the level of tissue that I need on my frame, because, I mean, I'm about 30 pounds under the weight cap for classic. So I've got physically 30 pounds of muscle I could put on shredded, and I mean 10 pounds I think would look crazy. I think 20 or 30 would just be a completely different physique altogether. And it's, you know, it's that realization that, you know, the guys who are beating me aren't more conditioned than I am. They're probably not a better shape than I am on most parts. Obviously, there are some guys who are very, very good. So that can carry me so far. And then I think that is just like, you then need, because if they're going to reward mass all the time over conditioning to a certain point, even if you're peeled out your brain, you know, that you're gonna need that tissue. And I don't think that, I mean, you know, for 2 pounds this year, doing absolutely everything right, like to the T for like a whole 12 months, you know, where like, you know, you don't miss a meal, you go to bed on time, you're training your ass off, training with people who are pushing you to your limits every single day. You know, food was higher going to a show, like that was all to get like 2 pounds of muscle. And yes, it's a very good looking physique compared to the year before when I won my pro card. It was a definite improvement. But I don't think I would get that improvement again this year. Do you know what I mean? Like if I was to go back on stage this year, I don't think I would get the same transition, you know? So I'm quite realistic, and I wouldn't say it's defeatist. I think it's just like, you know, if you want to win a pro show and you want to get to the Olympia, that's kind of the level you need to be on, to be honest.
And as far as I know, obviously I might be wrong, but you are currently the only natural athlete who competes in the IFBB. Am I right?
No, there might be a couple. Yeah, I know that there's definitely some men's physique guys. I know there's one. There's actually a guy who competes, Tory Washington, who was a men's physique guy, and he used to compete in open body, but he actually competed against me in the lightweights in 2016. He came fourth in that show, but he's still natural. He's like 45 years old, and he still competes in men's physique. Very good looking physique. Just same again, needs more tissue. So there's men's physique guys. There's a couple of classic guys. I believe there's no open guys or 212 guys. So so there might be the odd one. I know a lot of people will, like Quentin Beastwood turned pro naturally, and so did Keon. Yeah, so you know, so I do believe that Keon was probably one of them who was natural as well, because even though he didn't compete in like the other, Quentin competed in natural feds, Keon didn't, but the size difference of then obviously maybe when he started doing stuff was kind of so night and day difference. Whereas, you know, maybe that, you know, maybe I'm one of the ones who's only maybe done a pro show natural. I don't know, as in that I know of, like personally, I guess, really. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, there probably is some other guys out there.
And when you decided to switch from, you know, the natural pro level to the IFBB pro level, why did you switch that? Is there any benefit of being? Is there any benefit of being an IFBB pro as a professional, as an athlete, as a coach?
100%. It brings you a. I mean, I think it's the kind of the pinnacle really, and that's not to take away from natural bodybuilding for sure. But I just think that, like, you know, I mean, there is people who work their whole lifetime to get an IFBB pro card, you know, and I believe that, you know, it's to have that kind of badge on your kind of name. You know, it's probably you're going to open up more doors and avenues for coaching, because people see that you're able to. It's like a degree, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's like having a top level degree of something. It shows that you're able to, you know what you're doing and all that kind of stuff, really. And I guess, you know, the IFB is, you know, still probably, you know, the most popular bodybuilding federation that there is out there. You know, you're going to get more notoriety. But the reason for doing it was just because it was a very high level of classics showing. I would have done a qualifier, but they did an open final, so that's why I ended up doing that show as it was, because of COVID.
Yeah.
So they wasn't able to put on another show.
To be honest, it sounds really good to say that, you know, IFBB pro Robert Waterhouse. Oh, by the way, I think you are the only one who didn't put IFBB in front of your name on the Instagram or the Facebook. Yeah. You know, everyone does that. That's how
I've got it on my Instagram. Yeah, I probably should update my Facebook one as well, I guess. Really.
Yeah,
but there really is Facebook anymore, to be honest. But yeah, it's one of them. So, but yeah, I think it was just the fact that it was like a high level classic show. I'd done some classic shows with the UKBFF and the PCA before previously. So that was one of the things. It was just to kind of have a first go at Two Bros anyway. So that was why.
And the thing is, the moment I put up your post that, you know, we're going to be doing this show later on, everyone started, you know, commenting that, oh, this guy's not natural. Oh, he's a fake natty. Yeah, I think it's, you get used to this.
I mean, I was probably used to that when I was 22. Do you know what I mean? It's I mean, you know, at the time, I think when I was younger, I was really defensive about it. You know, really defensive, kind of like, you know, if people would mention it on a night out, I would get quite, you know, annoyed about it and was like, you know, I am natural. But now it's like, I think when you reach a certain level in natural bodybuilding, it's like people can't fathom that you'd be natural, because especially if you're beating guys who are assisted and they're taking a lot of drugs, it's like there's no way on this planet he can be not taking anything and be better than I am. So, I mean, obviously you've got people, I would say that, you know, I've got very elite genetics, but I don't think I've got, you know, the best genetics out there. I just think that is kind of like, for classic, it fits me very, very well because of like shape tie-ins and like muscle bellies and flow. It's like, it's not really that. I mean, I say I'm only a 75, 76 kilo guy, but it's the way everything
flows. How tall are you?
5'9", 5'8.5".
Oh wow! I'm 6'1", so you are actually tall. You're tall.
Yeah. I'm not short, but I nearly made it. So yeah. So it's one of them. I think that is just you kind of expect it. You kind of, you know, when you reach that kind of level, no one's going to be able to believe that. But they also a lot of people haven't been training like that and competing like on and off for 20 years. It would be a bit different if I was like 20. You know, and doing that maybe, but I think it's the time that it's taken over that period of time. You can see the progression on the physique as well, you know. So,
and even, you know, I've been working out for 22 years, and I would say half of that naturally. And when I'm natural, it means I'm off for years, not months. I'm talking about like 5, 6, 7 years. I'm still over 220, way over 220, and when I'm on even just TRT level, I'm way beyond like 250. So when people think, oh, you cannot be 220 naturally. First of all, I'm 6'1", or probably even 6'2". And second, I've been working out for 22 years. That's 22 years. Never missed a meal, never missed a workout. Unless you do the same, you cannot say like it's not possible. Well, it is, but you haven't been doing the same. But
I've had 2 clients this year who've come down from 260 pounds as natural bodybuilders. Do you know what I mean? Like, both of them are very tall, very heavily muscled, and probably end up about 210 to 200 pounds on stage or so. So, like, a weight doesn't really mean much. You know, the guys are in shape at 200, which people wouldn't, you know, be able to sort of go, well, you wouldn't think that's too unrealistic.
Yeah,
you know. But I mean, yeah, especially like 6'1", 6'2".
Yeah, at 220, I look like a stick because I'm tall. So
Okay.
weight means nothing, right? So as Fuad says, let's get into the X and the O's, you know. But before we do that, the first question, drug testing, because everyone commented immediately, well, you haven't been tested and you're not doing the test, you're cheating on the test. So how does a drug test look like on a drug test show? Obviously not on the IFBB show, but you know, the shows you've done before.
Sure. Yeah, sure. So, so I've only ever competed in the BNBF just because I believe that to be the best natural bodybuilding federation in the UK. The drug testing is for every time you win a show or randomly they think that someone's maybe a little bit suspect or they want to do a drug test for someone. You know, a guy maybe who, let's say, not quite in condition, but he's like fourth, but very heavily muscled. They might decide to drug test that person. So you obviously you do a drug test. If you win, you then get every single person gets polygraph, so lie detector tested at a British finals. So you can't compete unless you've had that done. Now that is actually a really stringent process. I mean, I've heard horror stories of how bad some federations do this with just watching a video and this kind of shit. But this is like a 40-minute grueling. So what they basically do is they'll ask you the same line of questions 3 times. So basically what they get you to do is they obviously get a reading on it. And there is, from working with the federations, from the natural federations, there are multiple people who have not competed because they've not passed the polygraph test.
Do you think you cheat on that? Because I don't know how.
It's very hard to. You'd have to really know. I mean, you'd have to be... The reason what they say is why they're sort of not reliable in a court of law is because people who don't have empathy don't...
Yes.
Yeah. So if you'd taken drugs but you really just didn't give a shit, no matter if someone asked you and you said no, I've never taken any, and you believed your own bullshit to a certain point, you may skim through one. But because the line of questioning is like that, I mean, it'd be very hard to. So I know multiple people who've not been allowed to compete at British finals because they failed a polygraph. They won their qualifier, they passed the drug test, but they failed a polygraph. I know people who've also then been, been drug tested and failed drug tests as well. So for a number of reasons, whether it be diuretic, whether it be oral steroid, or whatever it might be. So TE ratio is the biggest one that people fail on. So TE, what they test for the ratio of testosterone is it's all through WADA. So WADA's drug testing ruling is basically, it used to be. And this, you might, if you've watched any of the Lance Armstrong documentaries, you'd probably know about this. So basically, from a natural athlete, around 1% of the country would be over a 5-to-1. So let's say someone's a 6-to-1 ratio. So that's epitestosterone to testosterone. That we found that was too high. So what they did was they brought the scale down, because over a 4, you're going to have a lot more majority. You might get 10% of the country. So what they do, and what happens is when you get drug tested like that, and I've failed 2 drug tests because of the same reason. So basically what happens is you do that test, and if mine was a 4.8 the first time and a 5.2 the second time, what you then have to do is you have to test your B sample with a carbonized isotope test, which basically proves if that testosterone that is in your body is synthetic or it is your natural testosterone. So that's how stringent it is. So you can fail that. If you choose not to pay for that test, then you don't get to basically prove that you're natural. Yeah. You fail, and they just ban you from the federation. So I've had to do that. I was close to a fail on one of the years. They retested me, and it was on the borderline. And then the next year after that, it was way over. So I had to pay for that test out of the prize money I won for the show as well. And yeah, it basically came back. You test because you take an A and B sample on the day. People used to think that you have to send a different sample in, but no, they basically take your urine sample and they split it. So split A and B. Obviously, they send it off to the lab where they do that, and that's what they keep.
Your sounds disappeared. I think it's gone. Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
My Mrs. headphones are suddenly connected to the podcast for some reason. Sorry about that. So what was I saying? So yeah, so basically they test the A and B samples, and then that's your kind of like your sort of right and proof to do that. As I said, I know people in the past who failed that test and then not tested their B sample, probably because they don't want to pay the £500 to know when they have cheated.
Whoa.
So it's not a cheap thing just to basically send it off 30 quid or whatever. You know, it's a decent amount of money. So, but as you know, that I always thought that was, you know, it was relevant and appropriate to basically prove that he was natural, because as I said, nothing to hide, and it was kind of one of them. So that's how they do it. Pro, you actually get tested out of season as well. So if you go to a qualifier and there is a drug testing guy there, every single chance that you'll be tested. They can get you to be tested at your house if they thought something was up or something had come about. But I've been tested about 3 times out of season as well.
So basically, fuck off everyone who commented under my post.
Well, it's one of them, because people can be like, well, you could pass a drug test, right? But for me, it's the same thing I said on Phil Ads. It's like, what's the point? If I was going to compete in an untested federation, if I'm going to compete in a natural federation as a drug tested guy or a drug user, or to use enhancements would be probably the right word, then I would just compete in an open fed. I wouldn't compete as a natural athlete. There's nothing to gain from it, to a point where it's not like you're earning thousands of pounds. I mean, the world titles I won, it was $1,500. I spent more than that on accommodation, food, and hiring a car there or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So like it's a nice bit of pocket money at the end of the show, but you're not gaining anything really from cheating your way out of beating over guys who aren't on drugs. So it's kind of one of those.
That's why I ask you about the drug testing, because to be honest, especially Broderick talks a lot about how to cheat, the WADA, but the polygraph is the part you cannot cheat. You yes, cheat on the blood sample, you can cheat on a urine sample, whatever, but the polygraph is nearly impossible to cheat that. So I'm glad you actually mentioned that.
I mean, I think it's a very good deterrent for a lot of people as well, because there's a lot of people who will do a qualifier, pass a drug test, and they won't do the Britain because they're worried about failing the drug, the polygraph. But as I said, I know multiple people who've not got through to the show. They don't name and shame them. They used to back in the day. They used to basically put a post up saying, or on the forum saying, such and such has failed a drugs test, and they'd share that with the other federations. So now they share the information with the other natural feds in the UK, because they're on better terms. But as I said, like for the whole legal reasons of stuff, let's say someone had been caught testing they work at a bank, they could lose their job or something. Do you know what I mean? So it's all that. So they don't name and shame, but I know multiple people I've walked in there with clients and stuff at where everyone's getting like checked in and stuff, and they're like, "Oh, are you competing tomorrow?" They're like, "Oh no, I failed the polygraph test." You're like, "Oh, okay." So it happens for sure. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So if you're ready, let's get into the questions then. Right?
Sure.
Okay.
No
So the very first, the thing is, I believe in bulking hard. I really do believe in that. I'm not saying that's the best fate, for everyone. Probably for most of the people, it's not. But for people who knows what they do, what they're doing, I think it's a good way. And I know you like the bulk based on your pictures for sure. Well, actually, you are really lean now, but that's not always the case with you, isn't it? So
for sure.
So when you're trying to put mass on, when you're trying to put muscle on, how do you do that? Do you bulk? How high do you let your weight goes? How do you do that, basically?
So I think it all depends where your starting point is. I always think the very best gains I've ever made have always been on a reverse out of a show. So whether that just be a bulk and straight out the gate from when I was younger and I would just fucking eat everything in sight for 6 to 8 month period or whatever afterwards, you do retain and build a lot of tissue doing that for sure, coming from being really like stage lean. The problem is probably where I've got a little bit older, I guess, really, is that 2 things. So the first thing is I think that everyone in the sort of younger years should probably do it at some stage, because you will change your physique. You will be able to lift stronger, bigger, and obviously weight moves weight. So I do believe that it's something that you should do as a younger age, keeping yourself in a really, really lean condition in the off season when you're younger, and just doing that for you are limiting yourself. It's like, you want that, if you had a bucket of water as your sealant, You want that to be overflowing every day. You don't want that to be where you're just getting there, because you say you are limiting yourself to how quickly you can progress, especially in them younger years when your testosterone levels are naturally, through the roof, for sure. The problem you get is that as I've gotten older, is way the skin goes back. So bulking too hard. I mean, I'm about 28 pounds over contest weight at the moment. So I wouldn't say I'm lean by any means at the moment, but I'm also not 60 pounds over this time around. So that's where I have been in the past. So there's that. But I also think as well, the problem I've had in the older years is that how much actual activity you have to do and how low my calories had to go to get into shape. Any probably muscle that I did put on through that bulk, I probably would have lost over such a long diet. Now, that wasn't really my fault to a certain point because of COVID. They kept moving the shows back. But so there's my kind of like, now I'm like, look, I actually can't do that now because the skin is definitely getting looser around my midsection than it ever has been. I have a problem with it on show day now. Like, it goes back super tight. But there was definitely a phase in 2020 when I'd kind of got up to 220 pounds again, and I cut down to 165. Like, there was times in the middle of that I was thinking, fuck, this is not going to go back the same. It wasn't like I was when I was 20. So
I'm really glad you mentioned this, that you get a really good rebound after the diet, because that's in my program almost every single time. That before I put someone on the bulking phase, I always have them dieting a little bit, maybe just for
100%.
4, 5, 6 weeks. And I've done myself the same last year. I was dieting for 6 months and then a crazy rebound. Well, I got really fat. It doesn't matter, but it works. It works every single time.
100%.
But the question is, after that, it gets really hard to lose all the fat, but that's still a way to do.
I just think that it puts you in such a good level of like the ability to be able to eat well. I mean, I'm 4 months into my off season now, and like my appetite is nothing like it was on prep. I mean, I was probably eating just as much food as I was on prep, and I was still eating over 400 grams of carbs a day towards the end of my diet. Do you know what I mean? So it's like my ability to, I would be like ravenous all day long. And yes, the activity was higher, but I don't think you can kind of put until someone goes through that process, you don't really realize like how good the rebound phase is, even if it's a very short time. Like, I did Worlds in 16 and 17, and I got really fat between like November to January, and I ended up starting dieting in like January, February time again for that show for that next year, and it took me all year to go. I must have put on about 3-4 stone in the space of about 3 months, so 20 kilos or so. So what happened was, but then the year after that I said, if I can just get back to where I was. But I was definitely bigger on stage again the year after, and I only had probably a 3-month off season, so it's definitely had put some tissue on. So, I can't really deny that kind of anecdotal evidence for myself, really.
So if you have to pick, if you have to choose between, the lean bulk, so just barely eating a surplus, or way over surplus and the maintenance and gain maybe a significant amount of fat, but of course you gain a lot of muscle as well, which one would you pick for yourself?
So for myself, I probably would be on the slightly lower side now, but in my 20s to 30s, 100%. Nothing was going to convince me otherwise, other than eating as much as I physically could. If it went up to 10 meals a day, I would do that. I'd spend a time of, where, if cardio wasn't an option, it was do as little as possible and eat as much as possible. Now, yes, my philosophy's changed on that as I've gotten older, because they say the body's not going to respond the same. But I do think people should spend some time getting as strong as physically possible and getting heavy, because I think that you add maturity and density to your physique that you don't get from just kind of trickling along calories over and just trying to stay in shape.
And of course we have to mention that this is your job right now, so you are a professional athlete. You cannot you just can't walk around with 30% body fat. But when someone tries to do the same without being professional or even without being an athlete, I think they should really bulk. And then maybe they get fat a little bit, but so what? Who cares? This is not your job.
I think as long as people obviously have the know-how and the understanding of how to take it off properly, because my diets were always very, very long. Even from the bat, really. When I was maybe like my very first show, I got in shape within about 14 weeks, and I was heavy in the off season. I was about 220 in the off season. So that was as a junior. So, I mean, I think that's one of them, but said like, you know, that each year the body definitely changes. The metabolism changes. Your fat cells probably increase over a period of time with dieting. But I think each time you find a formula of how to get leaner and sharper and more mature, so the muscle looks different. So.
And I've seen a lot of transformation pictures from your clients on your page. When you work with them, how do you do that then? Do you let them to gain, you know, a decent amount of fat, or do you try to keep them lean? What's your
I actually try. Yeah. I try to keep them leaner because a lot of people can't deal with the fact of being bigger in the off season. But also as well, a lot of them clients I take on like that come to me like that. They don't come to me in good shape and then I get them fat as a house. You know, they come to me and go like, "Fucking help, please," and I go, "Okay," and then we start a shred. So that's often how it happens. There's not been too many that I've ever like, you know. If I get a client who gets a little bit too fluffy in the off season where I'm really not kind of happy with it, usually for me that's about 3 stone over comp weight, so 18, 20 kilos over comp weight. I'm like, okay, you probably need to tidy up just a little bit, and then we can get you in a good position to start your diet. Because I want that dieting process, if we're going to do a show, that's, you know, probably 50% of my clients I have a contest preps. Would want people to be enjoying their diet, eating a good amount of food on their diet, you know, not doing the crazy calorie cutting and stuff that you would have to do if you're severely overweight. It's at some point you've got to take that off, you know.
It's funny you said that. I do actually the same. That when I get a client and, you know, I start them on a diet, it's basically it's more about get to know their body, how it reacts to the diet phase, and then I can decide how far I let them go with their body fat based on that diet we've done before. So I know if they can lose fat just like that, yeah, no problem. Let's put on 30 pounds. Who cares? But if you have a really hard time to lose fat, then yeah, don't go fat. Don't get fat later on.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and you know, when people say, "But oh, you just gained 50 pounds." Well, yes, I have, but I know how to lose that, and I don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
That's different. Just because you can do that, or maybe I can do that, that doesn't mean that the person who asks for help can do the same. We're not the same.
Sure.
Right. So what about dieting? What about dieting as a natural? So you've done, okay, so we know now that you love bulking even as a natural, but what about with the diet? So how hard are you dieting when you are on a diet?
So I guess it's, for me, I mean, I've always, well, since I've done well in shows to a certain point, it's always been very high carbohydrate consumption. So usually anywhere for clients from 2 to 3 to 4 times lean body weight. Most of the time it'll be around 3 to start off with. So if, you know, if someone's 200 pounds, you know, they're eating 600 grams of carbs a day at the start of a diet.
That's insane.
You know? So protein is usually done on 1 gram per lean pound of body weight. This is probably something that a lot of people don't do and usually go way over.
Way over.
So it's not. Yeah, so it's not per pound of body weight, it's per lean pound. So what I would often do with educated eye of prepping clients for the last 10 years or so, when I get a client physique pictures at the start, I usually be able to have a good gauge on where they're going to be show lean. So I would usually base their protein on that and then maybe an extra 20 just for a bit of a buffer. And then that would come right down. So I mean, my protein this year was only kind of 170 grams a day. It wasn't excessively high. It probably started about 200 and then came down. And then it's a very low fat approach. So most of the time it's anywhere between 0.2 to 0.3 top end. It doesn't usually go over that. So per lean pound of body weight as well. So for me, so like for a diet, for me, my typical sort of like starting macros for a diet would be 400 grams of carbs to 450. 180 to 170 grams of protein, and then usually about 35 to 40 fats top end.
The thing is, actually, just about probably 90%. You just described my diet. That's exactly what I do. Maybe I eat just a little bit more because I'm heavier, but that's it. And that's what I believe in, basically. You know, the low fat, high carbs approach. Okay, so what do you say to people who thinks that, you know, carbs make you fat, insulin makes you fat, and all that bullshit? Because I think that, and I'm pretty sure that was a time when you believed that too.
I wouldn't ever say it was that carbs make you fat. I just didn't believe that it was possible to get in shape while having them.
Yeah.
So it was really the fact that, even in the off season, we'll get particularly fat at, certain points really. But I mean, I guess the sort of basic fundamentals is that if you are understanding that your carbohydrates are the most efficient energy source for you, okay, it's the most easiest way for your body to utilize those. So for people who are, let's say you've got two guys, one person is eating 400 grams of protein a day, and the other person is eating with zero carb, and the other person's eating 200 grams of protein and 200 grams of carbs a day. Calories are the same, okay, but what you will often find is that person who's eating 400 grams of protein a day, their body is having to try and convert. It's like, if you, rather than take the direct route down the motorway, you've got to take this scenic route on how to get your body to utilize those carbohydrates. So by having those carbohydrates in your system straight away, you've got them there stored in the blood, in the muscle, in the liver. So effectively, you've got a very efficient way for an energy source to be there. Now, obviously, from a bodybuilding standpoint as well, that physique looks different because the person's muscles are more pressed against the skin, so you've got a fuller look. You probably find that you have more energy to train harder. So correct. Therefore, then you're not creating a false economy, because I would rather have someone eating more food with more carbohydrates, the energy to train. So therefore, they then do more because they have more energy. They can lift heavier. So all these kind of things, it's very, very basic and simple when you think about it. But until someone makes that switch, it's very hard for them to understand, because I was the same when I started. I made that switch and was like, no way, that's not possible. How is that person eating 400 grams of carbs a day? It's not possible.
Correct. I was the same.
And then you do it and you start to see, you probably are looking at about a 2-week window where you will look worse rather than better. So if someone was on that 400 grams of protein diet a day, zero carb, and then they was on 200, you switch that over, you'll look like a bag of shit for about 2 weeks. You just look very watery and think, no way, carbs aren't for me. My body doesn't respond to carbohydrates very, very well. And then you'll see that you'll start to get tighter, harder, rounder, and there's an adjustment period. You have to get your body efficient at using those carbohydrates as well. So it's not just like a 2-day fix where you suddenly just start looking better. Yeah. You've got to get used to that, and you've also got to create a demand for those carbohydrates as well. It's all very well that you eating 400 grams of carbs a day, but I'm doing cardio every day. I'm lifting heavy, and and I'm training damn hard in the gym when I'm going in there as well. I'm not just kind of trickling through some top sets, Yeah. So there's definitely a big difference in that, and I've seen that with clients over a period of time. Couldn't understand why people aren't getting in shape, and then you watch some of their training, you're like, oh, okay, I get it now. They're just not really doing a lot.
Yeah. And what's the lowest calorie amount you ever go to?
Oh, wow. In 2020, when I'm on the pro card, I did days of about 1,400 calories. Now, days. I mean, like maybe a Thursday, Friday, but my Saturday, because I was carb cycling at the time, my Saturday might have been 800 to 1,000 grams of carbs. So the calories were about 4,000 or so, maybe plus. So if you averaged it out across the week, the actual carbohydrate consumption was about 300 grams a day. When you averaged it out, it was just that it was kind of like to kind of dig some more body fat off. And same again, I was coming down from very heavy. This time round, I mean, my carbs didn't get below 300. The fats were at like 25 to 30 for quite a while, and that was pretty miserable. And protein was about 170 or so. So whatever the calories work out, for that. But you're looking at about 2.4, 2.3, something like that. But I mean, it's different every year. Depends where you've come from, what you've got to do to get down. I mean, you look at a Chris Bumstead. He simply has got to eat that little to make weight for a show and get in shape. So I'm sure if he had no weight care, he'd probably get in shape on a lot more food. But that's the issue. So
it's funny you mentioned Bumstead, because you and Chris are the two examples I always bring up for my clients. When we go below the 2,000 calorie limit, that's like, it's almost like a threshold. If you go below that, they immediately start starving and they immediately start suffering. And I always tell them that, listen, you are not even 200 pounds. You are natural. You don't really have muscle. Yeah, of course, I'm very polite when I say that. And I always say, you don't need more than 2,000 calories if Chris or you yourself, with really good genetics, with PED in Chris' case, and still needs to go below that. So even I go below that sometimes. So it's not that bad.
where the difference is and what people don't understand, it's the length of period you do that for.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've always said to people, like, they say, oh, I've over dieted this year. Like, I have a lot of my clients who've come down from like high body fat levels. They might be dieting for 10 months, but they've only really got in shape at the end. There's been people who maybe do a qualifier in May, June time, and they're not competing in the British finals till October, and they're already in shape. That's how you over diet, and that's how you over diet on low calories, because it's running low calories for too long a period of time. That's why I would do the bigger days. And then you said it wouldn't just be 1,300 calories every single day. You know, that's miserable, and you're probably going to look like a dead bird by the end of it. So
and of course, carbs matter, because, you know, being on, I don't know, 1,800 calories with 300 grams of fat is really different from having the same amount of calories with 50 grams of, carbs.
Of course.
Carbs.
Yes. Yeah.
That's different. Yeah. When you keep your carbs quite high, at least, you know, 30-40% of your overall calorie intake, that's actually not that bad. You can go really low like that.
Yep. And, you know, and you'll still be hungry all the time. And, you know, you know what I mean? You're still, even though you're probably eating a decent amount of food still, it's like, you know, it's a lot of volume of food sometimes, but it's actually just very, very low calorie because the fats are so low. So, you know.
Yes. And of course, people forget that you, as a natural athlete, you only have one hormone you can actually manipulate in your body, and that's insulin. There's nothing else really left. And that's why you use the carbs as an athlete should use, really, all the time. Right. We covered now. So you love bulking. Now we know how do you do the cut, and how do you train? How do you work out? What's your training workout philosophy? You train to failure? You train a lot? Are you a volume guy? Are you an intensity guy? So what's your approach for yourself?
So the last 10 months has probably been the biggest transition of training for me from how I ever used to train. I would typically kind of pyramid up to kind of a main top set. I would probably do 2 or 3 sets at a heavy weight. So, you know, pick a weight I could do for kind of 6 to 8 repetitions. Usually, let's say for chest, it might be something like 15 to 20 sets or something, like it was a fair amount. Now that's probably halved in volume, but we kind of use this kind of the JP approach now, which is kind of load back offsets.
I love
so
that.
You've got, so I found that's been very, very good for me to be able to get, you know, the maximum amount of strength. So using a lot lower rep ranges to get to a top set. So my kind of thing would be feeder sets before. So I would do, you know, 10 reps on 20, 10 reps on 30, 10 reps on 40, 10 reps on 50, and then I'd work at 60s for maybe a 5 or 6. So you're, you know, fatiguing that muscle by the time you get to that. So you already got a pump by the time you're doing the main first set. So the idea with this is that you're effectively using a lot lower rep ranges, only 1 or 2 reps until you get to that main working weight of 60. And then I'm then obviously going, you know, as hard as I can. And then you're usually taking off like 10-20% load, and then you're going for a 10 to 12 range. So you're trying to get strong across the 2 different rep ranges. And that's been really effective. Still fair moderate to high volume, really. I guess there might be 3 lots of pressing exercises and then maybe 2 lots of fly exercises, but they're only 2 sets of each. So it maybe is only like 10 to 12 sets maximum per body group.
It's actually, I'm only smiling because everything you say is exactly the same what I say in every single video, and that's what I approach. To be honest, sitting now here and listening to you, it almost sounds like you are a science guy rather than a bro science guy, because everything you just say has been backed up by science. You know, the lower rep range, you can see the moderate volume for naturals I'm talking about. That has been studied, and what everything you just said is backed up by science. That's how it works for natural fat.
I mean, I wouldn't really say I'm a science guy as such, with the fact that I base a lot of my
knowledge,
I guess, beliefs and knowledge on my actual going through the processes of doing
experience,
what works, experience. Because I mean, you know, I could read that in a textbook, try it. Like, I mean, you know, I tried push-pull legs for a while, and I understand the science behind that and why it works, but I didn't like it. Didn't like it at all.
Yes, I tried. So, I don't like it. Yeah.
You know, I couldn't recover from them training sessions quickly enough. So I think things like that. I mean, you know, I'd say, like, you know, what might, like, it's like the whole thing of, you know, not doing fasted cardio because science says like it doesn't really matter when you do your thing. But you know, people have been bodybuilders have been getting shredded for years doing fasted cardio. That's something I'm going to continue to do. You know, whether science says or not. So it's kind of what I'd probably say. It's probably somewhere in the middle. A lot of common sense, I say, would probably be the you know, probably where I sit on the fence of whether I'm science or bro science. It's a lot of common sense to training and what feels good and, you know, you progress off really.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. To be honest, sometimes personal preference just override the science.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
I kind of know what's the best exercise for certain body parts, but if I don't like that exercise, I'm not going to be doing it.
100%. Yeah.
Same as a diet, you know, that if someone proves, which that's never going to happen, but if someone proves that low carb is the best diet, I'm still not going to do that because I hate it. I'm just not going to do it. So, you know, as Broderick always says, the best answer is not always, hang on, no, he always says that the best answer is not always the doable answer.
Yes. Yeah.
Just,
makes sense.
It does. Right, coaching, because I know you are a really successful coach. Are you coaching only natural people or are you coaching enhanced PED user guys as well?
90-10. 10% assisted guys, 90% natural guys. It was predominantly natural guys for a long time. I'll often lose a lot of clients because I'm not able to give gear use knowledge really, to be honest. They just assume that you are, and they assume that when you maybe come on board for coaching that you'll then be like, okay, what's the secret? But I'm just like, oh, honestly mate, I don't have a fucking clue. I mean, I have basic knowledge. I have basic knowledge on you know, gear use and what people, because I've obviously got training partners and stuff who obviously use stuff, but not anything I would feel comfortable. I mean, obviously the thing that works so well is diet and training. You know, if you do that with someone who's enhanced, they will get a much better result than a natural. It's going to work twice as well, just because simply they've got stuff to be able to, you know, allow them to retain more muscle, recover faster. So I'm kind of on that side. I'm like, look, we're going to work well for a natural. It's going to work twice as well for you. So great. And, you know, I've got a lot of these, you know, people in shape who are assisted, you know, for shows like inside out conditions, you know. So there's a lot of basic fundamentals I think that people should take from a naturals diet to do that, you know, diet a little bit longer. Probably not as high protein use, things like that. But yeah, it's about 90% naturals now, I would say.
It's crazy because here's the same. Yeah, well, I would say 100% because I don't take on non-naturals, although I am not a natural athlete, but I will never give advice about something I'm not qualified for. Maybe sure. I'm a bit more educated, you know, on PEDs than the average Joe, but I still don't have a certification about that.
Sure.
So therefore, I just cannot give advice about that stuff. And also the other thing, we both live in the UK, and there's insurance as a PT, you know, as a coach.
Sure.
There's some insurance, liability issues, and I'm just not giving away advice about drugs. That's just the case. I'm just not doing that. So I always say that you can be not natural and, you know, coach by me, but don't talk about the PED. I need to know if you are on PEDs, but I don't care how much. I don't care what it is. Just tell me if you are enhanced or not so I can adjust, you know, the food, the diet, the workout. But what you actually take, I don't care. I'm not going to give even my opinion, I'm not going to give.
Sure.
So when someone asks you about PEDs, do you actually give advice about that stuff, or you just
No, not all. I usually would say, I mean, sometimes I would look at things and being like, do you think maybe that's a little bit too much? You know, that was sometimes my answer of kind of like, you know, you probably get a lot more out of a lot less. That would be my main sort of, you know, advice really. But I do have people around me and stuff who would usually advise them on things like that if I really needed to. But also, as I say, most of the time, it's like, look, I'm not the best person to do this. If you're happy to do your own stuff, then fine. Happy to obviously coach you on the rest of the stuff, but I just can't give you any kind of like, you know, if I was to get into a bit of a pickle with someone with what they were using, they had some sort of side effect from it or something like that, and I wouldn't know where to start. So that's the problem with it. So I'd always just say, like, you know, you run your own gear and I'll do your diet and training, and we'll just, as long as I know if it's going to make you harder or watery or what it's going to be, that's all I really need to know. So
Just one more question back to the training.
Sure.
You believe in must-do exercises? That there's an exercise you have to do in order to gain muscle or whatever. Do you think that there are exercises you actually have to do?
I think if you asked me this 10 years ago, I'd say yes. Now, no.
Same.
Only because I mean, you know, I was before I won my pro card, I was very big on deadlifting until I got injured. I was very big on squatting, always barbell squatted for years. This is the first year I've not barbell squatted because simply I've had some knee issues and I wasn't able to train through lockdown. I was only able to do like 100 kilo squats or whatever. And my legs suffered for it massively because I get a bad hip, bad knees. I have something called housemaid's knee where the tissue on the knee on the outside gets inflamed and it's not fluid. The actual tissue itself is inflamed. So you couldn't get to like a 90-degree bend. So I was having to hat squat and leg press. And now that's been the best thing that's been done for my leg development, just probably because I'm able to actually use proper load through it. And it's not a biomechanic issue, I guess, with like, you know, a barbell. So it used to be for me, to answer the question, bench, squat, deadlift, and bent over row was kind of my main things, and probably a overhead barbell press for shoulder press or dumbbells. Now I would say that you still have to have those, you know, basic fundamentals in your program, but a variation of them. Like, yeah. I don't think you can get a decent back without doing decent, you know, heavy barbell rows. You probably give it a T-bar row, but like a variation. So I think the main compounds have to be your bread and butter for sure. But I wouldn't say that I'm attached to any or married to any movements these days by any means.
That's what I always say, that you have to do certain movements, but you don't have to do certain exercises. Exercises are not the same as movements.
Sure.
It's just not.
Yeah, that's it.
Have you ever tried? Yep.
Go on.
Have you ever tried the shockwave therapy for your knees?
Yes.
Did it work?
I've had it done over my shoulders. To be honest, I threw the kitchen sink at my shoulder injuries. I had cryotherapy, shockwave therapy, acupuncture, deep tissue. I mean, I spent thousands of pounds last year on treatment. I mean, I was going to deep tissue twice a week, acupuncture at least once a week. So I could say, yeah, it all works, but I don't know which one of it works. It's just better. So
same here. And so I get dry needling as well. I do stretching every single day. All that.
Yep.
I actually have a partial tear in my supraspinatus rotator cuff. That's not fun. And you mentioned, you know, getting injured during the deadlift. I have a herniated disc. So what's yours?
Yeah, so it started. I've never got it diagnosed, but I mean, something popped in my back doing deadlifts. I was extremely heavy at the time as well. I was about just under 18 stone. It's the heaviest I've ever been. So I think most of my issues were caused from being so heavy. It was, yeah. It's the heaviest I ever was. That was the year before I won my pro card, in 2013. So yeah, that was something went in my back when I was training one day, and it was never the same since. So I then just decided I was really shit at bent over rowing. Couldn't bent over row like 2 plates, and now I can, you know, bent over row comfortably with a decent load, and I just don't deadlift at all. So whether that's hindered my kind of some of my hamstring and back development, I don't know, but it's given me longevity. It's probably extended my lifting career for probably another 10 years because I was just getting injured every week trying to go back to doing the same exercise, you know, because you had to deadlift kind of thing, you know.
Right. So we covered your bulking diet. We covered your diet.
Sure.
We covered your workout. And what about with supplementation? So what supplements do you take as a natural? What supplements can you take as a natural?
Sure. So, I mean, I'm not really a big subs guy, but I mean, I do think there's like some basic fundamentals you should have in your diet. I think vitamin D3 is always something that should be kind of really considered. I think as kind of just an essential mineral, that sodium should be very high in people's diets as a natural bodybuilder, or any bodybuilder, to be honest, or any athlete. I've tried boron, which is a natural test booster. I'm not sure if you heard of that. D-aspartic acid as well. So usually we'll use those in off-season prep, whether they actually do much or not at all. But I mean, I've always had, you know, I guess even if it was a placebo effect, if it was 1% for me, that was kind of something I would do. intra-workout EAAs, and usually with cardio, and then a post-workout glucose and hydrolyzed or whey isolate. So that's about as kind of, and creatine maybe as well. Usually that would be in my pre-workout, so depending on what I'm using. So yeah, kind of. I'm a big caffeine guy as well. I drink a lot of coffee, so I guess you could call that as like a supplement. Maybe someone who doesn't drink a lot of coffee, I think there's some benefits there as well. Obviously not too much, but there's definitely some benefits. But that's about as wide as it gets spectrum wise, you know. So that's basically anything you can take under WADA. So WADA's sort of drug list, if you like, is basically anything like SARMs, prohormones, anabolic steroids of any kind is all a no-no. Diuretics are all a no-no. So anything that kind of works to a certain point is not available.
I was about to ask about SARMs as well, but now you just said that. What about fat burners? Do you take fat burners, test boosters, stuff like that?
So a good fat burner, Yihimbine HCl, that is not on the WADA list, but it's actually difficult to get a lot of, like, you can't get it in the UK ready available.
Yes.
There's a couple of places to do it, which has always been very, very good. Like I usually would take that in the morning with caffeine, fasted, and then you usually have to get the best effects from that as well. You need to have about an hour and a half, 2 hour fast window. A lot of people will eat directly afterwards, and it's always effective if you do it that way.
Yeah, I do use that at the very end of my diet as well. There's a certain reason for that.
Yeah, I usually put it in about halfway through, and usually Synephrine is not a bad combination to use with that as well. I use like Cineburn or something like 30 milligrams, I think it is. That's about the only two that I think as fat burners that actually work. I mean, I think if you're going to use like a Grenade, the Inform Sport or something, which doesn't have the bitter orange peel and stuff like that, and you can, they're not bad fat burners as far as like to give you a bit of caffeine and something like that, really. But I mean, I think a lot of the things I said, if you can get something that will get you to expend more calories because it gives you a bit of a lift, or maybe it suppresses your appetite as well. It's quite good.
Yeah. And also increase the NEAT level a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. So things like that really work. As I said, the test boosters, D-aspartic acid, boron. I think it's Tonga Ali or something. I've not ever tried it before, but it's supposed to be very good as a natural T booster. But that's about all. I mean, apart from I've tried. I can't remember the other name of the other one now. Oh, you've got like Bulgarian Tribulus, things like that. I've tried all those, but I mean, really, the only ones I've really found to be kind of like half decent was the boron and the D-aspartic acid together, basically. So for test boosters.
It's funny enough, the DEA is kind of a new thing, but you mentioned the boron, and I think the first time I ever read about that was like a magazine from the late 80s, I think, late 80s. Yeah. It's been around for like 40, 50 years, and it works.
Sometimes it's just like you might be like you hear it on a podcast and it makes it popular again. It might be on FUADs or something, and they're like, oh, okay, I've used this and this, and then everyone goes out and tries it or whatever. But same again, really, with all this stuff, it's like everyone's different. Everyone's natural test levels are different. But like things like just like a vitamin D3, like having a really good, I use like 10,000 IUs a day of that. So like what's actually you'll get in the UK is like an effective dose, a recommended dose in a pharmacy compared to actually what's an effective dose is very different. You'll get like 50 IU or something. You're like, no, you need about 8,000 to 4 to 8,000 or something to. Like I've just had blood work done, and my vitamin D3 was just in like the normal ranges, and that's from taking 10,000 IUs every day.
That's really good you mentioned that, because my next podcast will be with Dr. Dean, and he's really
nice.
He's really big on blood work. And you just mentioned that you've done yours. Why? As a natural athlete, why are you doing blood work?
Yeah. So what I was really intrigued, first of all, was if I ever was going to go down the assisted route or enhanced route, to kind of see if it's even possible first. As far as like, do I have predisposed liver problem? Do I have anything that's kind of really out of whack? So I've got cramp in my neck where I've just been sat there looking at the screen for the whole time. But the main reason was because after this diet, my natural testosterone levels have definitely not returned to normal, shall we say. I mean, I've definitely, I've always considered that I've had like a really like high sex drive, high kind of libido, and high kind of like just know that my testosterone levels are pretty high anyway. And they have just not bounced back the same after a diet. Don't know why. Maybe just the fact that I was maybe more conditioned than I've ever been, and just whatever reason, I don't know. But I decided, look, well, there's no harm in. There's a good guy down in Birmingham. I'll go try it out and just see where it is. And it came back. I was like right bang in the middle of where your testosterone levels are. So if you go from 0 to 29 was a scale, I was at 17. So there's no real problems there, and it's probably is coming back to kind of normal. But I mean, I think it's a massive difference from when I was 25. I must have been off the fucking charts when I was 25 because it was just, do you know what I mean? Like I can feel the difference in myself every day. So that was one of the main reasons I wanted to go get that done. And as I said, the other thing was to be like, after dieting all these years on and off, like, do I have anything wrong with my liver? Do I have anything wrong with other things that I maybe could improve? Like, I mean, it came back like, slightly deficient in iron. So I need to take an iron tablet every other day. I need to eat a little bit more avocado and a little bit more salmon because my triglycerides were low. Or high, sorry. So like little things like that. It's like because I don't eat enough of that because I'm a fairly low fat approach guy. It's just, if I can improve those health markers, it might improve my performance, therefore might improve me as a bodybuilder. So I think that, as I said before, I was like, well, why have I bodybuilded for 20 years and never ever got it done? But I would probably advise other clients that I have now to probably go have a look just to kind of see,
It's just a private question. Did you go through the NHS or did you do it privately?
No, I did it privately. So there's a guy called Imran at Transform U, I think it's called. He's in Birmingham. He deals with a lot of the top IFBB pros. He's the kind of guy to go to. He knows all his shit and kind of will give you a very good sort of a good opinion on everything. And he's obviously very clued up with anabolic use. But like here, he's supposed to be the top guy to go to. So I was recommended by a couple of people from him just to go have a chat with him, basically. So that was.
It's funny you just mentioned this decreasing in the testosterone level. That I just posted a study a couple of days ago saying that when you are on a long deficit, when you're on a diet, especially if it's a contest diet, your natural testosterone production decrease really, really badly, almost
it will be
zero level. And what do you think? Is it because of the low body fat percentage? Is it because of the low fat dietary intake? Or is it just because of the deficit? Why is that?
So we've got to think about this from kind of like a really common sense standpoint. If you're in nature back in the day, if you like, back 10,000 BC, whatever, if you are starving, reproducing is the last thing on the body's priority list.
All right.
So simply the fact that low body fat will do it, but even if you was just to go for a period of time of like starving, even if you wasn't particularly low body fat, you'd probably find that would drop quite significantly. So poor nutrition, low body fat, being on a too low a calorie for a period of time. Let's say someone does that who, let's say someone's 20 stone. They're just severely, morbidly obese. If they massively undereat every day, 100%, their hormones will be in the toilet by the end of that process. Even if they drop a good amount of weight, they will be able to, absolutely tank those kind of things. So that's why it's kind of important. Like, definitely a higher fat diet will probably increase your testosterone. It's like, it's just like one of them things. It's like, look, we're going on the basis of like the difference between the look and then what's going to optimize optimizing your health and your hormones is very different to kind of getting the best look on stage. It's two completely different things.
That's what I always say. You eat for performance or you eat for health, but it's not the same.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, you could find a nice middle ground. I always say in the
nice balance.
Probably have a nice balance for sure. And like I would probably say like between like the ages of where I am now over the last like 4 to 5 years is probably the best I've ever felt in my life, like on a daily basis. So even though my probably testosterone is not as high as it was when I was 25, it's like I feel great every day. Like I bounce out of bed every morning and like my body doesn't ache. It's like, I've had some little niggles and injuries and stuff, but they've been induced from hard training as opposed to like I'm just getting old or something. Do you know what I mean?
Bob, I know. I promised 1 hour for you, and we
That's
already
okay.
opened 1 hour now. So, but this you just mentioned this decrease in testosterone. That this leads me to my last and the next question as well. What do you think about TRT? Would you ever consider going on TRT?
Me personally?
Yeah.
I think if I was going to take testosterone in an honest answer, I would probably want to be in a super physiological ranges for it.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, TRT is good. It's going to probably help to build muscle, but is being up to maybe where I've been when I was 25 going to put me back into the level of muscle mass to put on 10 or 20 pounds? Probably not. So, I mean, I wouldn't rule it out, but the fact that I know my blood work is kind of like, you know, I'm bang in the middle. It's not like it's, I think I would consider it maybe if it was just like, if it had come back at 0, then yeah, 100%. There would be a reason at this age where I'd be like, look, you know, I'm 4 months post show. There's no reason why I should be this low, and I would maybe try a few other natural remedies before I went to that. But yeah, I think that it's quality of life is important. You know,
Yes.
If someone is like feeling like depressed, miserable, and stuff, and that every day, then 100% they should go for the doctor and get. And they would advocate that. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So yeah, okay, you can't compete in natural federations anymore, but you know, for me, as I said, it's like it's not now because I'm not competing in those federations. It's not as important for me to, you know, consider that as a decision. But like, yeah, 10 years ago, absolutely it would have been. I'm sure if I'd got blood work done after a show, I'd be probably pretty worried because I would be like, my testosterone is non-existent. But it always comes back. It's always come back really quick. And I think that was the thing for me this year, is that it just didn't return that fast at all. It was almost just as long as I was. It felt like as long as I was dieting, as it was, like, you know, as it was to come back. So we're probably where we are now in November and competing in like August, and it's starting to get somewhat back to normal. You know, so it's a long time.
That's what actually Broderick always says, that, you know, you either have a quality of life, and by maybe taking TRT, or you have a quantity of life, not taking anything, but then you are, you might be living longer, but you are miserable all the time. So which one would you take? And
yeah, I mean, I definitely think, you know, it's a very personal decision. And as I said, I think that it's something that I've thought long and hard about. And I mean, I honestly can't just kind of bring myself just to fucking jump in and go full ball. I just can't, because I think that when you've done it for a certain way for such a long period of time. But it's definitely on my brain more so now than it ever has been in my life, I would say. So.
Right. Okay. 2 questions. First,
Sure.
would you come back for a second part? Because I wrote down 50 questions and I only asked like 4 or 5. So
of course you
I
can.
still have questions. If you are willing to come back for a second one, then the last question for today is, I completely forget what I was about to ask. Right. No, I know. No, I don't. So no more questions for today.
Okay. Cool.
Right.
Yeah, it's okay.
I think we covered a lot of things. We covered your bulking, we covered your training, we covered your supplementation. Now I know your opinion on TRT, even on steroids as well. So I think that's pretty much enough, and that would do for today.
Sure.
And then I talk to you later then about, you know, the second part.
Yeah, just let me know what you're doing part 2. I always enjoy podcasts. I used to do one every week with my friend of mine, but he moved to Switzerland, so we've not been able to sort of do it as often. But yeah, I do just like, I mean, I love this. I mean, you know, been bodybuilding 20 years and never ever lost the love for it at any point. So you know, live and breathe it every day. So I'm always happy to jump on and do these kind of things. So yeah, 100%. Just let me know when you want to do part 2, and no problem.
Yes. Well, before you go, my question, I remember now. Would you consider yourself as the best natural on the world now, because you compete in the IFBB? Because I think you are, because I don't know anyone else who does that. So I know it's a hard question and you won't be probably honest, but if you can, what do you think? Are you the best natural right now on the world?
So honestly, no, and that is just because I am probably one of the best natural classic bodybuilders. I definitely will take that crown for sure. But I mean, there is guys who've beaten me multiple times in natural federations, and I'm only a little bit better than what I was then, and they've advanced as well. So then you've got people like David Kay, who was the guy I mentioned on Fuad's podcast, Nathan Williams.
Yeah.
They've both beat me in an overall. You know, they're 20 pounds heavier than me on stage. Maybe David Kay, not so much, but like they're two guys I know straight off the bat. So that's only in that one federation. You've also got people like Babacar, who's just won his IFBB Pro card. I'm not sure if he's still natural. He probably is. The guy is absolutely gigantic. He's probably nowhere near as conditioned as I get, but I mean, the guy has got so much muscle mass on there. So there is a lot of heavyweight bodybuilders who are naturally better bodybuilders than I am, for sure, because they have the level of tissue that I just can't get on my frame. So if they're 200, 210, 220 on stage, you know, I'm still 165. So that kind of weight balance makes a big difference. But I'll always be very competitive against those guys because of shape and flow. But if you judge it on classic, I said I'd probably find it hard for someone to beat me in classic as a natural bodybuilder. But as far as for that criteria, but for actual natural bodybuilding, I think there's a good handful of people actually who would probably give me a good go. And I mean, there's a lot of people in the BNBF, you know, it's like top natural pros, even guys who aren't really well known, like they've got tons more muscle than I have. You know,
I've seen. So. You know what? Just a really quick one. My training partner, he won, you know, the BNBF UK 3 times. So he won that, and
who's
one
that?
of the Ben. His name is Ben. He's Hungarian. You probably don't know him.
Okay.
I've done my very first podcast with him like 6 months ago, and on one of the occasion I was actually there. And I wasn't natural at that time. That was like 7 years ago. So I was probably the only one in the audience assisted with PED. I'm not kidding. I was the smallest one. I looked like shit compared to the guys on stage, and they were all naturals. It just shows the level of
when you get into the genetic elite, I think people they can't understand it because it's like. And I've said it before, you know, if I want to become, you know, a marathon runner, and I'm absolutely obsessed with marathon running, my level of like explosive muscle fibers and you know, and being very kind of very fast twitch fiber probably dominant, I'm never going to be any good at, like, you know, I was never any good at cross country at school. So it's like, so then you assume like people like, you know, your Mo Farah, like, oh, it has to be on steroids. Now, probably, okay, the top 5% guys are, who knows? But, you know, you could go back to 20th place, and it's like, no matter how much I trained all my life, I would never be as good as that, because your genetics for bodybuilding is simply allowing you to get to that level of muscle mass. So there's just guys who obviously are naturally very strong. There's guys who naturally have good shape and flow for bodybuilding. So it's all across all different sports. Hand-to-eye coordination, do you know what I mean? I could train all my life to be a professional snooker player. I'm never going to be any good at it. Even if I practice hours, and it's because I don't have that hand-to-eye coordination. So it's just one of them things that people just, for some reason, because everybody likes to go to the gym, or most people do, if you're kind of, you know, like fond of that, you can't fathom that the fact that guy, say you start taking some steroids, start doing this, start eating well, and you look nothing like them guys, you're like, well, they have to be assisted. But people don't really understand, you know.
Yeah, it's funny. Actually, I had a lot of question about genetics, because that was one of the topic I wanted to talk, you know, for a bit longer, but maybe next time. But sure. Funny enough, you know, everyone accepted the fact that they don't have a genetics to be a NFL player or a swimmer. Yeah. But then when it comes to bodybuilding, everyone says, well, if I take drugs, I can look like that. No, you don't. And when they say you cannot be 240 or 230 naturally, well, I am. I can. But because I have genetics to do this. That's why I'm not a runner. That's why I'm not a swimmer. Because I have a genetics for this. That's why I do this.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. This was amazing. I wasn't fanboying. That's the thing. I wasn't fanboying. So it wasn't too bad.
That's great.
Right. So thank you very much for being here again. And you already said yes for the second one. So I will contact you next time.
Just let me know. I'm around next week as well. And then I might be out the country for a couple of weeks. Go to visit my mate in Switzerland. So, but yeah, let me know.
Where do you live, Bob? Which city?
Midlands, so Burton-upon-Trent.
Oh, that's really, that's really far from here. I'm the other way.
Okay. Where are you?
Bournemouth. Yeah, Bournemouth.
Oh, okay. I've got some clients in Bournemouth as well. But yeah, it's about 2 or 3 hour drive up or so.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, cool.
Cool. Right. Thank you very much. And thank you very much, everyone watching the show today.